Check the CCTV camera again.
Yeah, I've seen it. That's her. That's Gloria Serge. It was a quiet morning in Fort Pierce, Florida. 85-year-old Gloria Serge had walked this path countless times, her small dog Trooper faithfully by her side. But on this February day, something was different. Beneath the glassy surface of the pond behind her home, a predator waited. One that had grown bold, one that had lost its fear of humans. In just seconds, the peaceful routine shattered. A 10-foot alligator surged from the water, and Gloria was dragged under, helpless, as neighbors watched in horror. What unfolded was captured on security footage.
An alligator has her. It's dragging her into the lake.
She never stood a chance. This is the terrifying true story of a life lost in the jaws of a monster raised too close to man. The horrifying last minutes of Gloria Serge, eaten alive by alligator. Wait, they were sued. Yes, you heard that right, but I will break it down in the story. If you're new here, welcome to the Animal Quest channel. We dig deep into the most disturbing real-life animal attack stories the world has ever seen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so you never miss a story that matters. Just beyond the bustle of the Florida coast lies Fort Pierce, a city nestled in St. Lucie County, known for its palm-lined streets, subtropical climate, and the kind of serenity retirees dream of. And within Fort Pierce sits a picture of quiet paradise, Spanish Lakes Fairways. It's a gated 55-plus retirement community with soft green lawns, quiet sidewalks, and neatly trimmed hedges. Homes line up along curving roads, many of them facing one of the community's many man-made ponds, each meant to add a sense of peace and charm to the neighborhood. But behind the manicured landscapes and painted shutters lurks an ancient threat. This is Florida. And in Florida, humans live side by side with one of the world's oldest predators, alligators. There are more than 1.3 million alligators estimated to roam Florida's waterways, rivers, swamps, lakes, and ponds. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has issued warning after warning. Where there's standing water, there's likely a gator nearby. The residents of Spanish Lakes Fairways were used to this. It wasn't unusual to see an alligator basking on a bank or slowly gliding through the water at dusk. Most were cautious, some became complacent, but many didn't consider them a threat. Over time, that caution faded, and for Gloria Serge, it would prove fatal. Her backyard backed up directly to a retention pond. Just a few yards from her porch, the water looked calm, mirroring the trees and clouds above it like a postcard. Most mornings, Gloria would walk along the narrow grassy bank, her little dog Trooper, a white Shih Tzu, trotting ahead on a leash. She had walked this same route every day. It was routine, familiar. But just beneath the murky surface, an alligator was watching her. It wasn't a coincidence. This particular alligator, measuring over 10 feet long, had been seen in the pond multiple times before. It had grown used to people. It had learned that pets walk close to the edge, and that was all it needed to wait. By 12 p.m. on February 20th, 2023, Gloria, 85 years old, had stepped outside with Trooper for what would become the last walk of her life. She didn't know that just below the pond's glassy surface, death was waiting with jaws wide open. Gloria Serge was the kind of woman everyone in the Spanish Lakes Fairways community knew, if not by name, then by the sight of her. A quiet figure, always with her beloved dog Trooper by her side. At 85 years old, Gloria had embraced her retirement with grace. She was a widowed grandmother, deeply devoted to her family and fiercely independent. Though her movements had slowed with age, her spirit remained sharp and her love for animals unshakable. She'd adopted Trooper years earlier, a fluffy white Shih Tzu who never left her side. That dog wasn't just a pet. Trooper was her companion, her protector, her daily joy. Every morning, like clockwork, Gloria would clip on Trooper's leash, step out onto the narrow grassy strip behind her home, and begin her walk around the retention pond. It was her quiet ritual, one that brought her peace. Neighbors described her as kind, reserved, and gentle. She waved to passers-by, exchanged warm hellos, and kept to her routine. She didn't stray from the path. She never walked too close to the edge, and she certainly wasn't reckless. But this was Florida, and in Florida, routine can breed overconfidence. Familiarity becomes comfort, and comfort can be deadly. Still, no one ever expected danger to strike someone like Gloria. She wasn't careless. She knew alligators existed in the pond. Like most residents, she'd seen them basking on the banks from time to time. And like many others, she believed that keeping a respectful distance was enough to stay safe. She was wrong. The morning of February 20th, 2023, started like any other. It was a Monday. Temperatures hovered in the 70s. The sky was clear. It was the kind of day retirees live for. Quiet, calm, full of sunshine. Around midday, Gloria walked out behind her unit with Trooper on the leash. The pond shimmered with reflections of clouds. The wind was still. She couldn't have known that just below the surface, a predator had been watching. It wasn't just lurking, it was hunting. And in the alligator's eyes, Trooper was prey, and Gloria was just in the way. In mere moments, her peaceful routine would erupt into terror. And what happened next would send shockwaves through the community, the state, and eventually across the country. The predator that stalked the still waters behind Gloria Serge's home wasn't just any alligator. Residents had seen him before. They even gave him a name, Henry. Over 10 feet long, with a broad, ridged back and pale yellow eyes, Henry had become a fixture in the pond at Spanish Lakes Fairways. He was massive, easily one of the largest gators to haunt the community's waters. But more than that, Henry was bold, too bold. People in the neighborhood had grown used to him gliding silently near the banks. But what some didn't realize, or chose to ignore, was that Henry had been fed by humans, illegally. Over time, he had lost his fear, and that's where the danger begins. Wildlife experts warn that when humans feed alligators, whether it's on purpose or by accident, the consequences are deadly. A gator that associates people with food stops seeing them as threats and starts seeing them as opportunities. When humans feed alligators, one expert from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission once said, they lose their natural fear, and that's when they become truly dangerous. In Henry's case, that warning had already come and gone. Residents later told investigators that Henry had been seen following small dogs along the bank before. His long snout breaking the waterline, his body moving with chilling patience beneath the surface. It was predatory behavior, deliberate, calculated. This was no accidental encounter. Henry was hunting. And while most people stayed far from the edge, small pets often wandered closer to the bank. And to a gator like Henry, a dog trooper's size might as well have been a floating snack. Spanish Lakes Fairways had no signs posted around the pond, warning of alligators, something that would later come under public scrutiny. But longtime residents knew they were there. And on February 20th, 2023, Henry made his move. As Gloria Serge stood with her back turned, watching Trooper sniff the grass near the water's edge, Henry began to rise. He was silent, powerful, driven by instinct, and within seconds, the peaceful calm of a Florida afternoon would be shattered by violence. February 20th, 2023, a quiet Monday in Fort Pierce, Florida. Temperatures hovered in the high 70s. The air was crisp, the skies clear. Another postcard day in Spanish Lakes Fairways, a peaceful retirement community built around shimmering man-made ponds. Just before midday, around 11 a.m., Gloria Serge stepped outside her home with Trooper on a leash. It was part of her routine. She always preferred walking later in the morning, once the dew had dried and the warmth of the sun filled the grass. From across the neatly trimmed lawns, a few neighbors noticed her, as they often did. One waved. Gloria returned the gesture. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She was standing roughly 2 feet from the edge of the retention pond that ran along the back of her unit. Calm water, barely a ripple. The surface shimmered with reflected sunlight. Birds chirped softly in the background. Trooper sniffed at the base of a palm tree near the waterline, just a few feet ahead of her. And then, the pond moved. What looked like a ripple at first suddenly took shape. A large shadow surged beneath the surface, swift and deliberate. Henry was coming. Gloria didn't see it, not until it was too late. The 10-foot alligator exploded from the murky water with terrifying speed. But he wasn't aiming for her. He was aiming for Trooper. The dog yelped, scrambling back. Gloria screamed and instinctively yanked the leash, trying to get Trooper out of reach. But in that split second of heroic reflex, she made herself the closer target. Henry adjusted. His jaw snapped open wide and redirected. With a violent splash, the alligator lunged directly at Gloria, jaws clamping down with immense force. One neighbor, Carol Thomas, stood watching in horror from her kitchen window across the pond. She saw the massive reptile pull Gloria into the water, dragging her down with terrifying strength. She was trying to get back up, Carol later told investigators, but the gator wouldn't let go. The struggle was quick and devastating. The alligator performed what wildlife officials call a death roll, a brutal spinning motion designed to disorient prey and tear flesh. Gloria thrashed, screamed, fought for her life. But at 85 years old, she didn't stand a chance against the sheer power of a 600-pound apex predator. She disappeared below the surface in a swirl of bubbles, blood, and thrashing limbs. The pond, once calm, now boiled with violence. But Gloria Serge was gone. What happened next was captured on the security cameras of a nearby home, a grim, blurred glimpse into Gloria Serge's final moments. The footage, later reviewed by investigators, shows a shadowy figure near the pond's edge, struggling in the water's dark embrace. The terrifying reality unfolds in shocking silence, until a neighbor's frantic voice breaks through. From just down the street, Carol Thomas's 911 call crackles over the emergency dispatch line. "An alligator has her! She's in the lake! Hurry! Please, hurry!" Her voice trembles with fear and urgency, pleading for help no one could give fast enough. Another neighbor, Mark Reynolds, hears the commotion and rushes outside with a long wooden pole. He sprints toward the pond, heart pounding, desperation fueling his steps. Mark shouts Gloria's name, his voice cracking, but the distance and panic leave his calls unanswered. He reaches the water's edge and swings the pole wildly, trying to strike the monstrous shape beneath the surface. But Henry is too powerful, too fast. The gator's grip never loosens. Seconds stretch like hours. The pond churns violently, splashing over the bank. The struggle is unseen by many, but Mark's frantic efforts, desperate shouts, and the frantic 911 call paint a haunting picture of a battle for survival. Despite his courage and determination, Mark's help comes too late. The alligator pulls Gloria beneath the water. The deadly combination of traumatic injuries from powerful jaws and drowning seals her fate. Silence falls once more over Spanish Lakes Fairways. The pond, once a symbol of quiet suburban life, now a grave. Within minutes of the frantic 911 call, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission officers arrived on the scene. They quickly established a perimeter around the pond at Spanish Lakes Fairways, a place now marked by tragedy. The search for Henry, the 10-foot alligator responsible, began immediately. With decades of experience tracking these reptiles, the officers used sonar devices and bait to locate the massive predator lurking beneath the water's surface. Hours later, as the sun began to set on that grim February day, Henry was caught in a large trap set just meters from where Gloria was attacked. Due to his dangerous behavior and the threat he posed to residents, wildlife officials made the difficult decision to euthanize Henry. Meanwhile, medical examiners conducted an autopsy on Gloria Serge. The report was heartbreaking but clear. Drowning was the primary cause of death, complicated by severe traumatic injuries inflicted by the alligator's powerful jaws. The peaceful retirement community of Spanish Lakes Fairways was left reeling. Neighbors who had once waved and shared morning greetings now stood silent, their faces marked by shock and grief. A vigil was quickly organized, candles flickering against the Florida night, soft prayers whispered for Gloria's soul. One neighbor, Linda Martinez, whose home overlooked the pond, spoke with deep sorrow. "It could have been any of us. We all knew that Gator was there. Some of us even fed him. Stupidly, I know that now. We should have spoken up sooner, called the authorities. Now we're left with a terrible loss and a reminder that nature isn't always forgiving." The tragedy left the community questioning their own complacency. and sparked conversations about wildlife safety, responsibility, and respect for Florida's vast alligator population. But for Gloria Serge, the quiet grandmother who loved her morning walks, and her dog Trooper, there would be no more peaceful mornings, only memories. By March 2023, just weeks after Gloria Serge's devastating death, questions had already begun to surface. How could such a tragic event occur in a gated retirement community with nearly 3,000 residents? And more importantly, could it have been prevented? On January 25, 2024, nearly a year to the day after the attack, Gloria's son, William Serge, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Wynn Building Corporation, the owner and operator of Spanish Lakes Fairways. Speaking at a news conference, William's voice trembled as he recalled the unimaginable phone call he received. "1 year ago, I received a phone call that every son dreads. I never could have imagined the agonizing way that my mother spent the last moments of her life." The lawsuit, filed in St. Lucie County, alleges that Wynn Building Corporation not only failed to protect residents, but knew about the alligator well before the incident. The attorneys for the Serge family claimed startling new revelations, that maintenance workers had routinely fed the alligator chicken scraps, and that they had even named the reptile Henry. It wasn't just a wild animal. According to the suit, Henry was a known, habituated presence, dangerously accustomed to humans. The complaint seeks at least $50,000 in damages and calls for a full jury trial. At its core, it argues that the corporation knew or should have known about Henry's presence and did nothing to remove the threat or alert residents. No warning signs had ever been posted around the lakes. No public notices had been issued. Residents, the family says, were left in the dark until it was too late. Wynn Building Corporation. President Joel Wynn responded to the allegations in a public statement. "We certainly understand the tragedy and the feelings of Mrs. Serge's family. However, we developed Spanish Lakes Fairways 37 years ago. We have approximately 3,000 residents. This is the very first time where a resident was attacked by an alligator." Mrs. Serge was a longtime resident and certainly knew of the presence of alligators and that they were inherently dangerous animals. But for Gloria's loved ones, the tragedy was far from an isolated freak accident. To them, it represented a chain of negligence, misjudgment, and a failure to uphold the very duty of care the community had promised. Now they wanted answers and accountability. To understand how a peaceful community could be transformed into a deadly trap, we turn to wildlife expert Dr. Karen Ellis, a Florida-based biologist specializing in alligator behavior. Dr. Ellis explains that the root of the tragedy lies in a common but dangerous misconception: feeding wild alligators. When humans feed alligators, it disrupts their natural instincts, she says. They begin to associate people with food instead of fear. This conditioning makes them bolder and far more likely to approach humans aggressively. In Florida, home to over 1.3 million wild alligators, state laws strictly prohibit feeding these apex predators. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission enforces protocols to manage nuisance alligators, those that pose a risk to humans, through capture, relocation, or in extreme cases, euthanasia. Communities near natural habitats implement a range of safety measures to prevent attacks. Clear warning signs are posted around ponds and lakes. Removal policies swiftly target alligators that show bold or aggressive behavior, and fencing or barriers restrict access to high-risk areas, especially in places with children or vulnerable residents. Spanish Lakes Fairways, however, lacked these basic precautions. No warning signs warned residents of Henry's presence. No removal program addressed the growing threat. No fencing kept people safely away from the pond's edge. Had any of these measures been in place, Dr. Ellis believes the tragedy might have been avoided. Education and respect for wildlife are critical, she warns. Living alongside these creatures requires caution and cooperation, not feeding or complacency. The haunting question remains: could Gloria Serge's death have been prevented with the right knowledge and safety measures? As Florida's population grows and encroaches further into wild habitats, the answer has never been more urgent. Gloria Serge's death left an indelible mark, not only on the quiet streets of Spanish Lakes Fairways, but in the hearts of her family. She was a beloved grandmother to 15 grandchildren, a pillar of her extended family, known for her warmth, kindness, and gentle spirit. Her passing sent shockwaves through the community and devastated her loved ones. In the weeks after the tragedy, her family spoke out, determined to turn their grief into action. They pushed for stronger protections for seniors and families living near Florida's waterways. Their message was clear. No one should have to live in fear, and no one should die like Gloria did, at the hands of a wild animal that had lost its natural fear of humans. Her granddaughter, Melissa Serge, shared these words in a public statement. "Grandma loved her morning walks with Trooper. She deserved to feel safe in her own neighborhood. It's heartbreaking that something so preventable took her from us. We want her death to be a wake-up call, so others don't have to suffer like we have." The family advocated for new laws requiring retirement communities and residential neighborhoods to implement strict safety measures, fencing, warning signs, and prompt removal of dangerous alligators. They called on Florida lawmakers and local governments to increase public awareness about alligator safety, especially in vulnerable populations. In her memory, they hope for a future where wild creatures are respected, but humans can live safely side by side. Gloria Serge's legacy is not just the tragic loss of a life, but a powerful reminder of the fragile line between nature and civilization. One woman, one small dog, one moment of instinct turned into a nightmare no one could have predicted. The serene waters of Spanish Lakes Fairways hide a deadly truth, a silent predator beneath the surface. Today, those same waters are bordered by yellow warning signs, a stark reminder of the price paid for complacency. Florida's beautiful wetlands are home to hidden dangers. For Gloria Serge, what seemed like a peaceful stroll ended in unimaginable horror. But her story is now a warning to respect wildlife, to heed the signs, and to never forget what lies beneath. If this story moved you, please subscribe, like, and share to help raise awareness and keep others safe. Together, we can honor Gloria's memory by spreading the truth and protecting our communities.